McDonald. Juicy Scoop.
Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop, legal extravaganza. I have one of your favorites that you guys have been asking me about. I follow you as well. It's Emily D. Baker, attorney at law, former prosecutor, now YouTube and podcast delight of information.
I love
Juicy
that.
stuff. Thank you. So you're in town for a little bit from Nashville. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's always interesting being back in LA after being gone because it changes so fast, but some things stay the same. So
well, that's good.
You know.
So we were talking a little bit about your background. So you grew up in Manhattan Beach, or that's where you were living before?
I grew up in Manhattan Beach, so I am a local
earth.
girl.
One of the greatest places on earth.
It's fantastic. I mean, expensive to stay in,
right?
But it's fantastic. I grew up here, moved away for law school briefly, came back.
Where did you go what was your education? Where did you go to school?
I went to Cal State Long Beach.
Oh, that's where our daughter just graduated from.
Love Cal State. Go Beach. Love Cal State Long Beach. And they had me back. I did my TED Talk at Cal State Long Beach.
That's awesome.
And I got so emotional just being back at my college and being like, oh my God, I'm here. And then I started law school at Seattle University and then came back and finished at Southwestern here in LA.
Nice.
Beautiful. Southwestern Law School is beautiful. It's the old Bullocks-Wilshire building.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It's just
not
a gorgeous
too far
building.
from the Tom Girardi law firm.
No, it isn't.
And that is where we got our beautiful
The coat rack of
is
infamy.
Here. Yeah.
It's amazing. No, I had a number of friends from law school that actually interned at his law firm. It was not uncommon to have people go over and work at Girardi Keys that were interested in exploring plaintiffs' work.
So then you went on to be a prosecutor here in LA.
Yes, I was a LA County Deputy District Attorney for over 10 years.
And what was the majority of your cases involving?
Oh, I did everything. So I had a pretty wide variety. I didn't specialize. It depends what courthouse I was assigned to. Everything from homicides and gang trials to tax. You know, the Franchise Tax Board will find you if you do not pay your taxes and criminally prosecute you, which is interesting. So
let me ask you about a hot new one that you haven't totally covered, but you might find this interesting. So, Real Housewives of OC, newest cast member, beautiful girl named Noella, is married to Sweet James, the attorney that is all over the billboards, all over local radio, personal injury. Hey, if you need something, go to Sweet James, okay? And just a couple months ago, it came out that he owes the IRS between $5 and $6 million.
Yeah.
But he's still on all the radio shows and everything. And then then he filed for divorce against her. So we're going to see it out on the show.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
But I also feel, as a Housewife fan, as I'm sure you are too, at this point, if you don't have some wicked divorce legal mess happening, could these franchises survive?
I mean, I don't know.
It almost needs to be a requirement. We need one. We'd like two, but we definitely need one person either facing criminal charges or their spouse.
Yes, some kind of mess. But it's compelling. When I was here to talk at a conference and everyone who came up to me was like, I enjoy your content. Can we talk about? And it was either Girardi or Jen Shah and some Britney because her hearing just happened.
Right,
but
yes.
People are fascinated right now with what's going on. And it's really pulled people into the shows in a different way. These shows that used to be fun and escapist and aspirational, and now they're just a little bit dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder where it's going to go from here. And I'm just, because you study it from like a legal aspect. I study it like, one day I might be a speaker at a university as the housewife consultant through history, because I'm like watch it from the beginning and I see where it's going, and I'm like very fascinated by from like a sociology point, like what will be the next thing, and then from a TV exec point, what will it be? Will it be that they get rid of the franchises and they pick the most fun, kind of crazy, outgoing personalities and continue to put them on a 3-week vacation?
Yeah, I'm very interested by the mashups.
Yes.
It's going to be very interesting.
I think that might be kind of fun. And then, let do that for a while, and then maybe rebuild casts that are younger and fresher and maybe bring it back in a different way. Because I feel like it's just going down a route that I don't know that we can get back, even though it's still super popular. It's just weird.
Yeah. I don't know if there's coming back from watching the first 2 minutes of Salt Lake City with Homeland Security just descending on Jen Shah, and she's like, turn off the mic, and she's scooting out, and you still kind of don't know if she was going back to the house where they were serving the search warrant or if she had another destination. I don't know if we'll see or find out where she was going in that.
Well, let's talk about Jen Shah for a moment, because
Absolutely.
when that went down that day, there was a lot of inside information coming. I think many of the housewives were texting people that they knew, and I might have been one of those people. And so what...
Allegedly.
So what I remember them saying is that you see her say, oh, hi, honey. Okay, take this off. And she just says, I have like a family emergency, and she leaves. And what I heard is her aunt picked her up, and then they eventually caught up with the aunt's car. Is that what you
That's
think?
what I heard.
Yeah.
And that's when, not just what I heard the day it was breaking, because I was when I had done a live stream, and then my phone started blowing up, and I'm like, wait, what? And so then I'm pulling up the indictment. But now that Jen Shah's lawyers have brought so many motions in court, the government has been like, oh, would you like all of the information? Here's all of the information. And one of the things was trying to suppress statements after arrest. And they talked about what led up to her arrest, because she was like, I was confused and I didn't know, and they stopped me, and I thought that they were trying to protect me, because she has this restraining order out against somebody who seems like they are a co-defendant in one of these cases. And so it was very interesting to watch the government lay out how the arrest went down. But yeah, they stopped the car, side of the road, told Jen they had a warrant for her arrest. And she's like, I'm confused.
Yeah, I've followed a lot of this stuff. And it seems like even cases that are not on TV, sometimes you're like, or even like a guy that, finally they arrest him for suspicion of killing his wife. But for a year and a half, he lived a cute life and walked around. Okay. And then the day they arrest him, it's, helicopters and this and that. Now, and then you'd go, well, sometimes then the defendant is like, was that really necessary? Like, you knew where I was. You didn't have to come to my son's baseball game. You didn't have to, you were following me for a year and a half. So here they do it in the biggest forum while they're filming. And I feel like, yeah, that was good for Bravo. But I also feel like these people doing the arrests, they like that big, TV movie drama moment too. Like, what do you think about that? These big dramatic arrests that happen.
I love watching it. I don't know how coincidental it was that they were filming, because the indictment was unsealed the day before the arrest warrant was issued. And the grand jury had come back pretty close in time to when that indictment was unsealed. And what's interesting to me is about 2 months before the indictment, 2 of the defendants had taken plea deals. So it's my speculation, and it's just purely speculation, that when those plea deals went down, they offered up more information that allowed the government to follow up to bring Jen Shah into this. Because now we know the government believes she's one of the tier A, one of the most culpable defendants, kind of at the top of this thing. And I think that came from other defendants who took recent plea deals. And so then they had enough to either find bank accounts or tie her back into this and then go ahead and arrest her. But yeah, while they're filming is a great way to do it.
I just find it interesting because it was in the parking lot of the beauty lab, which coincidentally, I got to go to Heather Gay's beauty lab when we were leaving Deer Valley and waiting for a flight to go to Salt Lake City. And it's like in a Big Five parking lot, okay? It's a lot, ample parking.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. If you're going to take a bus and you've got the crew, let's all just meet at that parking lot and everybody be there. And I believe they were shooting like a day trip. I don't even think it was a sleepover trip. I think it was just a day trip of them doing some activity. So I just want to know, like, because they're like, who knows? Did Meredith tell them? Was Meredith talking to the government to say, hey, we're going to be here this day? Was it a Bravo person? Did they literally just follow Jen Shah car to the parking lot?
Or her cell phone.
Oh, okay. So you think that might have been it?
I think they were probably tracking her cell phone.
Okay.
I don't know if they would have reached out to production, because her case is really dependent on a lot of evidence that can be digital, bank records, emails, and stuff like that. They don't want her to get tipped off to be able to kill switch any of that information. A lot of cyber criminals, I don't think Jen is a cyber criminal mastermind.
Let's kind of explain for the people that don't understand.
Yes, we should.
I think I've explained it well, but you could probably explain it better and clear. What exactly was her business in which it is illegal?
It's so weird to try to figure out her business because it's just all smoke and mirrors.
Right.
She's being accused of a telemarketing scheme in wire fraud and then money laundering, moving money around so it won't be detected. The wire fraud scheme's based on selling online businesses that they're alleging aren't real businesses. So they're selling smoke, essentially, and then selling people up the chain. It's like, oh, well, if you have this business, then you need our tax services, then you need our business coaching services, then you need this and this and this, and continuing to sell people. Jen Shah's accused.
And it never results in any profit for the person.
Or business.
Yeah.
Yep. Never results in anything, is what they're alleging. Jen Shah is saying no through her attorneys in their last document. Some people did make money. The thing is, Jen Shah knew about this because in 2016, the FTC was investigating these businesses.
What does FTC stand for?
The Federal Trade Federal Trade Commissions.
Okay.
Yeah. And they are involved with making sure that consumers are protected in the way businesses are marketing online. So she was being investigated for marketing practices and was deposed. So was Stewart. So they were both
her main
first
assistant who has appeared on the show. We just saw him helping with her closet.
Yes, we did. And carrying stuff out onto the ice when they went ice fishing.
Yeah.
So they were both deposed. Formally, they were sued for millions and millions of dollars over these marketing practices for the same businesses.
So they were sued civilly.
Yes.
Prior to this
Yes.
legal crackdown.
And what Jen Shah,
what was going on with those lawsuits?
It was for the marketing practices from the federal government with regard to the same businesses.
Okay.
And so what Jen Shah seems to have chosen to do was get sneakier in the way that she was doing those businesses. So we know that in 2016, these businesses were heavily looked into. They closed those corporations, started new corporations doing the same thing, but instead of using text messages, using the Telegram app, which is alleged in the court documents, because that app doesn't show up on your cell phone records and it's not trackable. And then having people start companies in Wyoming where you can register them without having a name attached. And so they started covering it up better, which I think is going to be damning for a jury.
I think that's really bad because that shows you that in 2016, you were made aware that what you're doing is not right. And instead of being like, well, let's get rid of this.
Find a new business.
Let me get my real estate license or start a podcast. Instead she was
start
like.
Start a church, something.
Start a church, yeah. Instead she's like, I'm going to double down and we're going to keep doing this and we're going to do it again. And this time we're not going to get caught.
Her takeaway was, I just need to be better at hiding what I'm doing. So that's what was really, when I was going through there's a lot of documents in this case. And when I was going through the government documents, I was like, that when you're arguing to a jury, and I did a lot of jury trials as a DA, jurors are pulled out of their life. They don't want to necessarily be there unless you can make the case somewhat interesting. I think the AUSAs have so much to work with Jen Shah.
What does AUSA mean?
The assistant U.S. attorneys.
Okay, yeah.
So I think they have so much to work with, showing, look, at this point, this is what she knew. Here's the deposition. Here's her testimony. Here's what she did after. So she's going to argue, I just thought this was a marketing issue. It's business. You don't understand. And the government's going to say, then why did you hide it?
Yeah.
Then why did you take all these paths to be sneakier? And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. She might be the only one going to trial. Everyone else looks like they're starting to plead. There's 2 other defendants that haven't yet, but Stewart's lawyers already submitted paperwork saying that he is anticipating a plea deal. So,
and what are these other people getting within their plea deal? Like how much time?
We don't know yet because the case hasn't resolved. But there's 2 other cases with groups of defendants that are involved in this larger scheme. And some of them have gotten into the 20-year range, some of them in the 10-year range.
That they plead out to? They have agreed to do that much time. Yeah. So do you think the Shah squad, just kidding, like as if she, when it started, I was like, listen, I didn't think she was doing a marketing scheme. I thought she was just full of shit. I thought she was just going in debt. I thought half of her stuff wasn't real. Like it was like counterfeit queen. And I just thought these assistants were kind of like Sonia's assistants that just agreed to be on TV and she didn't have to pay them so she could appear to be more successful than she was. Yeah. So I was really surprised to hear about this.
Yeah, when they raided her house, they took everything, but they didn't find as much cash at her house based on the court documents as they did at Stewart's house because they raided his house too.
And how much money did they find at his house?
God, it wasn't a ton of cash. It was like $100,000 in cash, but most people don't just have $100,000 in cash chilling in their house.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So it's very interesting. And Stewart ended up putting his house up as collateral for his bonding instead of having another person putting it up, which is what Jen did because she doesn't own physical property, which might have been part of this.
Part of the scam, too, not to own physical property.
Correct.
Got it.
Because there's nothing, you can't forfeit anything. I'm tracking another case of a YouTuber, and the government just did a bunch of asset forfeiture. It was 25 houses and like 100+ cars. But when you own it, the government can come in and take it. There's not a lot that Jen actually owns, which plays into those money laundering allegations because there are some offshore bank accounts alleged in the government documents. So you got to wonder where the rest of the money is.
And what about her husband? Where does a spouse come to play? Are they ever, do you think, a lot of people ask, could he be in trouble, Coach Shah?
I think if he was going to get in trouble criminally, they would have charged him the same time they charged her because it makes sense to me that they would have had whatever evidence they have is what they have. They've got her bank accounts, emails, cell phone records, everything. If there was enough to show that he was helping, I think they would have just indicted him at the same time. What level of culpability he has, it's the same conversation we get into with Erika Girardi. It's how much did he know? He clearly benefited. Mm-hmm. But how much did he know about what was going on? He's a lawyer. I mean, when
Jen Shah's husband is a former lawyer, yeah.
When she got deposed in 2016, I can only imagine he would have read those deposition transcripts. He would have known what's going on.
Or did they have some weird marriage where she's such a nightmare that he tried to talk her out of it, and he was just like, fine, do whatever the hell you want. Like, just keep me separate. I'm going to keep my $400,000, $500,000 paycheck that I get at the university separate from you, and like...
Always possible.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really hard. I know people want to know more about what Erika knew, and it's hard to know until we know.
Right.
Because these are Jen's actions with Stewart, and this is them running their business. And even when you go back and look at season 1 and look at the way she talks about her business, it feels like Unikitty in the Lego movie going, business, 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 business. Is this working? Business, business, business. Like that's every time she explains her business.
Yeah.
She just says a bunch of words, and it means nothing.
I was watching this TikTok, how there's that guy that goes, there's a couple TikTokers. One goes up to people in very nice cars. It's like, excuse me, sir, what do you do for a living? Have you seen that guy? Then I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's another person that literally knocks on people's doors. And I was watching one, and this guy lived in very, he goes, oh, I know who you are. Whatever. He's like, yeah, I own a marketing company. And I was like, because I'm like, what is like, a 50-year-old guy, a 50-year-old person, not that I know stuff, but that is like on the edge of marketing in 2021. What exactly is that? And so now I'm like, oh my God, if that's somebody's business, you better get a little careful here because that's going to be the new thing they're like going, this is the new Ponzi scheme, the new whatever. Because I think there's a lot of people that were doing something similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulations with marketing. And one of the things I think that Jen Shah's lawyers are going to be arguing is, look, if this is anything, it's a business practices issue. This is not a criminal fraud. And that's the way they're trying to push this. Look, we might have told people this and that, but that's really, it's marketing. It's business practices. And those are civil violations. It's similar to with Elizabeth Holmes's trial. That's some of what they're saying too on the defense is, look, some of these things are just, they're just looked down upon.
Elizabeth Holmes was the one drop of blood.
One drop of blood.
Yes.
Theranos. I wish my voice wasn't so hoarse. I normally can get down that low.
I'm really excited to be here because I'm going to tell you about something that's going to change the life. If I could have saved my uncle's life with one drop of blood, I would. Wouldn't you?
Okay. Brilliant. That's brilliant. As somebody who got picked on for having a low voice growing up, I get offended with the put on low voice. I'm like, look, man, I suffered the torture in junior high over this. Come on.
We've talked. Okay, so we're going to finish up Jen Shah. We have so much. We're going to get to the others. But what is it's just prediction. I do predictions. What's your prediction of what Jen Shah will end up getting as a punishment?
So it's hard because if she goes to trial, I think she could realistically look in the above 10 years range. I would be surprised if she pleads. Her ego doesn't seem to be of the accepting responsibility early variety. So I think she could get between 10 and 15 years in federal prison.
Wow. And if the
prosecutors aren't pleased with her.
Yes.
And we saw that even in the detention hearing when they were arguing over whether she should be on bond or on bail, you could hear the annoyance. I sat in on the entire call, and you could hear the frustration in the prosecutor's voice. And when they released their statement saying she's one of the more culpable, she's the one that was bringing all of the people into the scheme. So she was casting the net, but for her bringing people in, they wouldn't have been defrauded. So that's where the government is really saying that she's one of the more responsible people, which means they're going to argue pretty hard that she deserves a higher sentence.
Do you think at this point there are prosecution offices and FBI offices that have required watching of just all Bravo shows?
God, I hope so. This was not going on when I was a DA in LA County, and I'm like, I volunteer as tribute. I'll just call and tell you who you need to be looking at. I need there to be a Bravo unit in the AUSA's office.
Because I said years ago when it happened with Teresa and Joe Giudice, I said there is some prosecutor who's lying next to his wife who's watching this thing, and Teresa being right from the beginning, so my husband says cash is better, and I pay with cash, and was just like, I've always felt like there was this I can't believe, and I know this is another reason why I think they're suffering with great casting, is because I think anybody with some real money, they either their husband doesn't want them to do it, or they don't want to do it, or they're like, God, they're going to find, even if they didn't do something bad, some housewife, in the middle of America is going to find out that you did something shady when you were 21 and you rented that apartment in Santa Monica. And who knows?
Why bring the scrutiny?
How far can it go? It's literally worse than if you're running for office. They're going to find out everything. And especially if you had any kind of business that wasn't on the up and up. I cannot believe that people are so addicted to fame or want it so badly that they would risk
everything.
Their marriage, their family, their literal freedom.
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the housewives, I think
just to be on Watch What Happens Live.
We all want to be with Andy Cohen. He's that dynamic. But watching the amount of marriages that have crumbled when people are on the show is really shocking to me. I'm like, if your marriage doesn't feel rock solid, why would you want to put it under that kind of a microscope? It's fascinating to me.
I think the only marriages that have worked, because I've studied it, is when the husband is 100% down because he can benefit as well. First of all, Kyle and Mauricio, they have a great marriage, They have a great friendship, a great marriage, but he 100% benefited from he didn't have his own business. Now he has one of the largest independently owned franchises, the agency, and so he likes being on it. I think they have a good understanding. I think also her being an actress to start, being in fame world, I think she's known how to handle it right. Also, he's attractive. He's sexy. He's likable.
He loves being the hottest house husband, doesn't he?
Yeah. So there isn't a lot of jabs that the people can take on him. Then you have another great couple is, Lisa and Ken. Now, they have been victims of some hate. But the connection of we're going to do this together because the restaurants benefited Ken as well. I think when it's bad is when the woman does it and the guy, it doesn't help the guy's business. It hurts his business, or even he's on the golf course and a bunch of guys are like, oh my God, when you said this and my wife thought this on the show, and then he comes home and then he's mean to her. Then she's like, why are you being mean to me? Have you seen that I have 500,000 Instagram followers who love me?
Very famous.
And then they start to, and then it crumbles. And most marriages, 15 years in, if the dynamic switches that much and all of a sudden your wife who was never in the limelight is now, thinking that she's Angelina Jolie, I think, and the guy who always felt great about himself picks up his phone and everyone's just, discussing his lack of a jawline. He's like, what the fuck? And then before you know it, divorced.
Yeah. It's so interesting to watch it all play out. But I think the criminal aspects of all of this are going to be fascinating. I don't think we're going to have an answer. Well, Jen Shah is supposed to go to trial in March. We'll have an answer fairly quickly with her, but the Girardi stuff is going to take a while before we see, because I think there are IRS investigators that are like, oh, this is fascinating, because now as we're digging into this bankruptcy, we're starting to see, oh, the law firm was potentially paying the credit card bills, the personal credit card bills with law firm funds, and the IRS is like, oh, how else are you moving your money that might be perhaps not paying your taxes with it?
So speaking of that, we saw on this week's episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills that Erika says, I told my lawyers I expect to get nothing. And they said that was the bravest thing they've ever heard.
The bravest thing they ever heard.
So there you go. I told my son, you don't like my Instagram? Mama's got to pay the bills. Lick my pussy like the rest of the buffoons. What? What's going on, Erika? So if she's accepted that whatever money this going forward is what she's going to make, and being married for 20 years, she's going to have very little to show for it besides some good outfits and whatever. The question is, would she ever face any time or anything? My prediction is no.
It depends on if the IRS goes after them, because what we saw with the Giudices is Joe was really, in my opinion, the leading force behind that. Like, hey, sign this. And none of us think Teresa's a criminal mastermind.
Right.
Teresa's like, okay, Joe. Like, she was raised to just do what your husband says, and she did. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. She signed it. So if Erika's signing her tax returns, if there's tax issues, it can have a large implication for her as well, not just financially. She could be stuck in a very big hole of debt with not just the bankruptcy, but also if there's any IRS implications. So she could be left holding the bag, which people aren't going to have any empathy for, because she has not put her best foot forward on social media since all of this went down. So people aren't going to have empathy for her if she suffers consequences based on her husband's actions.
Well, with Teresa, I do think it was very believable that she didn't know what she was doing. But with Erika, it's kind of hard to, play, I'm smart. I talk to a lawyer every night. He's my husband. And I ask him, what's your advice on this contract? And he tells me, and he's a very bright man. He's at it. And now she's like, going to be like, I was just a dumb, stripper with, only a high school education. And it's like we didn't, that's where and then with Teresa, when she got in trouble, it's my understanding she wasn't really looking at time, except that then she wasn't honest about the bankruptcy. And that pissed off that judge.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what I don't understand. Like, if you ever got in trouble with taxes or anything, I just feel like, what?
Yes.
What?
How can I help you?
What do I need to do?
Yes, please.
Literally.
Prison is not a good look for me.
Yes. And so I do feel like Erika at this point isn't going to try to hide anything fresh. But what she did back then will still have some consequences.
Yeah, her behavior will definitely have impact. I think largely in the public, her ability to bounce back is still going to rely on how she handles this. She so far has not handled it well, I don't think. And we'll see. I mean, she's like, I stand to have nothing. And it's like, if you empathized with the victims and said, they have nothing, I have nothing, this man has lied to everyone, and I'm heartbroken for them, because at least, I've got a closet full of shit that I can sell, and I'm going to be okay. But she never said that. It was like, fuck everybody.
It's called Zero Fucks, baby. It's called Zero Fucks. It's a hit song on iTunes. The gays love it.
None.
Yeah. Not one.
Zero.
But Lisa Rinna did say, I don't know why she's not giving a lot of sympathy to the widows and the burn victims, but maybe her lawyers told her not to say anything. What's your thought on that?
Rinna has broke her back bending over backwards to try to make excuses. I don't know. But a lot of lawyers are savvy of the PR of this kind of litigation. Good lawyers definitely are. Litigation in 2021 is a two-part game. It's not just what you're doing in court. It's also what you're doing in the media. And she and her attorneys could have crafted a statement saying, we are going through the court process. We trust the court process and are heartbroken to see that Tom's clients are, have not been paid and taken care of. We were completely unaware. How hard is that?
Do you think there was ever a conversation with counsel or whatever, where they may have said, look, if you really want to save your ass, take off the year of filming because it's too hard. We can't control what you're going to say, and it's going to be used against you. I know if they even suggested that to her, she would say, hell no, because this has been her dream to be famous, and she also doesn't want to give up the one paycheck she has. But I would think at one moment, either between friends or her son or that might have come up. Like,
I mean,
usually people don't do, sorry to interrupt, but usually people don't do press interviews and stuff, or when they do it, they have their attorney sitting there and going, I can't answer that. They're letting her go film free with no editing power, nothing, just being able to incriminate herself with the Glam Squad came to the Fairmont. I thought she was doing her own hair and makeup because it definitely was the B team.
It's
definitely
not quite the same.
I
can't really talk. I do my own makeup. We're not.
I think you look good. I do my own makeup, and a lot of housewives do their own makeup because they're like, I don't want to spend $1,000 a day to do my own makeup. I can pop on my own lashes, but she's still paying for it, and we're seeing that during this. I plan to have nothing. Can I have someone else do my hair? Hair and makeup to go play pickleball with Kyle. Granted, it's on TV, but it's just something that the show wasn't like that earlier. What do you think of all that?
It's very interesting because it started filming before all of the shit hit the fan.
Okay.
So this season started filming and the shit hit the fan as they were filming. The Edelson PC lawsuit, it really kind of tipped the iceberg over in this, and that's when the divorce got filed, but they were already filming when all of that happened. I don't think she knew that this was all going to explode the way that it did, because once the Edelson PC lawsuit came down, all these other legal lenders went, oh shit, there's not going to be any money. And these are people that seemed, and you've done great interviews with Kimberly Archie.
Yeah.
These are people that when I'm reading the documents, I'm like, why are you still lending to him? They're like, well, we lent, and then we lent again, and then again. And Kimberly really helped tie that together. It's like, no, they're all kind of bros. And so there was this kind of respect, and this like, oh, no worries, we'll get it. It'll work. But with COVID, I really think the firm got so behind the 8 ball. There's no trials coming up. There's no incentive to settle. So the settlements start slowing down. And then everything just came to a screeching halt. The money was gone. The judge in Illinois isn't an LA lawyer, doesn't give a shit that half the bench knows who Tom Girardi is, doesn't care that he and the governor know each other. The Illinois judge is like, I'm sorry, where is the money? I'm freezing your assets. I'm referring you to investigation by the prosecutors, and I think you should go to prison. The judge didn't say that. That's just the tone. The tone came across.
Do you think that Tom would ever, especially in his latest diagnosis of having Alzheimer's, which I do believe he does have it. I don't think he had it 10 years ago. I think he probably had it in the last couple years. I have a friend that her sister ran into him that knows him in Pasadena about a year and a half ago and said he seemed off.
I think that it would be very hard to prosecute him to show that he knowingly intended to do this. The problem is you go back and look at some of the other cases where people have brought malpractice against him and the statute of limitations, which is fairly short, expired. I think Tom, this is my speculation, I think he was stringing people along being charming and or threatening long enough that by the time they were like, I have to just get another lawyer, it was too late. And those cases go back decades.
Right. No, I think he was unethical from the start. But I'm just saying, do I think he has Alzheimer's now? Yes, I do.
I mean, the Page 6, people made a lot of that Page 6 video.
Yeah.
But you could see him kind of grasping for what he guessed was the right answer.
Yeah, with the thumbs up.
It was like,
the thumbs up is like a big thing. A lot of people wrote, like, my grandpa does that, like that, because they're trying to hide it. They're not sure, but they know, like, to go,
it's good.
Like, it's, yeah. So I don't think him saying, I think she knew about Erika helps, hurts her or whatever. What do you think about when people say, is it, getting divorced when you're in this situation? Like I mentioned, Noella with Sweet James, he filed the divorce. How does that work with why filing a divorce when one spouse is in trouble? Does that protect the other spouse in some way if you file?
It can when you're going forward in time. It won't when you're going backward in time. So it depends on when they set the date of separation. If he's like, oh, we were separated a year ago, then it can in some ways. So with Erika's divorce, they never set a date of separation. It's still left blank on their divorce. And I don't know how much strategy was in that divorce. I know what we've seen on TV is I just grabbed my shit in the middle of the night and ran, but I don't know. There's still some questions because the divorce came so close in time to everything unraveling. I don't know how coincidental it was. When things seem too coincidental, they generally aren't coincidental.
And how do you feel about Ron Richards, who was on this show and on a lot of shows, a lot of other shows, the way he presents himself in social media and tweeting about this case and posting on Instagram? What are your thoughts on him?
Before he became involved with the bankruptcy trustee, he can say whatever he wants. He's a legal commentator. He's not involved in the case. There were things once he became involved in the case that didn't sit right with me personally, but my choices as an attorney are going to be different than his choices as an attorney. He and I still disagree, and he has told me how much he disagrees with me on this, that putting the American Express Bank statements or the American Express card statements on Twitter was totally fine. I think it's a financial invasion of privacy. Those are personal credit cards. I think the point could have been made without putting the credit cards out there. There's little things like that that don't sit well with me because at the end of the day, Erika is not in this bankruptcy, really. She hasn't been accused of any criminal wrongdoing. She's being sued to get assets back, which is fine. But if she's getting sued in the bankruptcy, she will have a right to a jury trial. And there are some rules regarding, pretrial publicity. But when Erika's lawyers brought it, they didn't set foundation for Twitter well, which I've been critical of. And the judge said, stop it with all of this. It's BS. I don't want to hear it. And Ron won big in court with the judge saying, basically say what you want on Twitter. I think leaking some of the information that isn't available in court documents doesn't sit right with me.
Do you think the $175,000 Jaguar Cartier ring is still in her possession? And if it is, do you think she'll ever have to turn that over?
I think she could have to turn it over. She's facing two big things here. She's facing the bankruptcy for Tom Girardi personally, where she's a co-debtor on a lot of those debts, like vet bills for racehorses in Florida and all kinds of shit. There's gardeners.
Wait, that they just never paid?
That they hadn't paid.
Oh, my God.
So the listing of debts on the personal side is quite long, but she's a co-debtor on a lot of those, and she's not divorced yet. So she's going to be responsible for those debts. I think they're trying to pay as little back with regard to the law firm because she is going to have to pay with regard to the marital debts. And I think she's trying to figure out how much do I owe here and how much do I owe here so I can sell whatever needs to be sold and then do that.
So, do you think in the future, let's say a year and a half from now, it's season whatever, and she's still on Beverly Hills Housewives. Now she, whatever, is dating someone else. We're just watching her life. And let's say she gets $500,000 a year being a housewife. Would it be that a fifth of that or something has to go to her bankruptcy? Where you have to, what is it called?
She could absolutely have to continue to pay back these debts. Unless she's able to settle for less with the bankruptcy trustees. But they're going to know her earning potential. It's not hard for them to figure out how much a housewife earns. So they're going to look at her earning potential. She's going to be allowed an amount to live. I don't know if the bankruptcy court's
I live in a tiny dollhouse. It's a tiny dollhouse. And you're going to take that away from me, too?
Yeah, I lived in 900 square feet with my family of four because that's what we could afford.
But do you have a giant dog?
It was a tiny dollhouse.
Do you have Mickey,
No! There's no
who I haven't heard from in months?
Wow. With the tiny dollhouse with the pool, but I don't think she's going to be doing custom latex with her newer budget. And, I think Teresa did a really good job of showing life after prison and I would have liked to have seen her dive in more to changing her entire life. I don't know if Erika is going to be open enough to do that. She is a proud woman and she definitely puts up a fairly strong front most of the time, unless it benefits her not to. The mascara.
Yes.
By the way, there's been lots of other crying and no other mascara running. It's been interesting.
She found that other thing in my tiny dollhouse. I'd replaced it. That couldn't find it that day. Last question on this, then we're going to move on to another subject. Sutton. What do you think about Sutton's concern that just being in this cast with her, that she revealed, like, I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth because I don't want to be dragged into this. Could these women be ever called into a deposition?
I just don't see what they would know in this current context that they would be deposed. It doesn't mean they're not getting dragged in the court of public opinion. And we've seen that with Lisa Rinna. We saw rumors being leaked that Erika had invested in Lisa Rinna's daughter's clothing company, which was total bullshit because it was a production company. So we've seen those who are defending Erika get dragged into this, some by Ron Richards. Mm-hmm. But whether legally they can be responsible, no. Whether legally they can be deposed, what would they know? Because right now, what stands is legally, how much does Erika owe for the shit that Tom did, and where does that come from? Was the Cartier ring purchased with marital property? Can it be sold? Was it a gift? California has some really interesting quirks on marital property, and that's what they're fighting out in the personal bankruptcy. You just don't hear about it because the lawyer assigned to that hasn't been talking about it.
I want to know where the Chagall is.
I want to know where the Chagall is too. Did it get stolen? Was it burglarized? Did it leave in the burglary?
Nobody knows where the Chagall is. We saw him give it to her. I want to give you something for your eyes. Oh, thanks, baby. And then we saw at one point when she's moving into the dollhouse some artwork, and one being covered.
Some artwork, yes.
And one was covered, which looked to be the size. So, I mean, I would assume a Chagall is worth $1 million or close to it. So that would be a chunk. I mean, it's more than this coat rack.
And who paid? And then again, did the law firm pay for the Chagall? Where did the money come from to buy it? And that's what they're going to be fighting out in court. And I think Erika PR could have done better, but I think her legal team, the strategy is we're not going to pay anything till we know how big this hole is.
Yeah. All right, let's get into Britney. The latest on Britney. So the latest Netflix doc I did begin to watch, and the consensus was there was no new scoop that we didn't already know of the people that have been following it, watched the first doc, have been following this going on social media for the last year or so. I actually thought it was done pretty well because I like that Sam Luffy finally spoke, though he didn't say much.
Well, there's not much he can say.
Because he signed all these NDAs,
and
right?
There's a restraining order against him still.
Oh, okay.
Because they went to court.
I tried to get him on Juicy Scoop.
The conservatorship went to court
yeah.
and took out restraining orders against him. And there's like there's two sides to Sam Lufty. Some people think that he was manipulating Britney, and some people are like, look, he was the one that was like, boo, it's your life. Do what you want. You want to go buy some Skechers and some sushi? Go for it. I don't care. And that he was kind of allowing her to do what she wanted and kind of buffering between her and her family. Her family, of course, her dad, presented that to the court that he was taking advantage of her. And I don't know how true that was. He was one of the people, it seems to me, that was trying to get her an independent attorney when she was at UCLA on that 5150
Sam
hold.
was or
Sam was.
Yeah. So, okay, so what is going on now? So a big breakthrough happened a couple days ago.
Yeah.
With with the Britney, Free Britney movement. You want to explain exactly what happened?
There's been some... Britney testified in court on June 23rd.
Which was amazing.
The audio heard around the world, right?
Still get chills thinking about it.
Absolutely same.
I'd like to drive my car, okay? I'd like my boyfriend to be able to take me out.
She said to the court, she said fuck like 4 times.
Oh, I loved it.
And people were just like, she said fuck to the court. I'm like, she has been saying what she's saying for years and no one has heard her. I'd be fucking pissed too.
Yeah.
She's also not a lawyer. She's like, fuck, I just want my life back. So on June 23rd, when she spoke to the court, it changed the trajectory of this conservatorship because the shit was out of the horse. There's no going back. Britney said it's abusive. She wants people to be in jail. And everybody who hadn't been following this before, I've been following it pretty closely for a little over a year, but people who hadn't been following it heard those audio clips and were like, wait, what is happening here? June 14th, Britney's finally allowed to hire her own lawyer for the first time. She's been paying over $500,000 in legal fees a year for 13 years for a lawyer she didn't hire. She's been paying well more than that for her dad's 4 law firms that he works with. So Britney finally gets her own lawyer, Matthew Rosengart. Rosengart's a former prosecutor, federal prosecutor. He's not backing down. He's worked with high-profile clients. He comes in and says, my first goal is to get rid of Britney's dad, get him out of this conservatorship. Britney's dad's the conservator of the estate.
I'm going to pull up this thing real quick. Keep going. Keep
no
talking.
worries.
Go ahead.
He's in charge of the money. Britney wants to go to Hawaii. Dad has to approve it. Britney wants to buy new shoes. Dad has to approve it. Britney wants a facial at the house. Dad has to approve it. She felt very controlled by that and refused to perform any further because her dad was the one that was in control. So their goal, the first thing, was to get him out of control of the conservatorship. He's the one hiring security that we've heard so much about. And it's interesting because after the June 23rd court date, it seems that Sam Ingham, her former lawyer, started getting substantial amount of death threats, that Jody Montgomery, the conservator of the person, started getting death threats. Jody submitted filings to the court saying, I need personal security. People are following me. The emails back and forth between Jody Montgomery and James Spears' lawyers are all, well, here's black box security. This is who we work with. This is Adon's information. This is what he suggests. So they were still working with black box 2 months ago. And on the last court date, September 29th, Britney's lawyers asked that James be suspended as conservator of the estate, that he be removed from it by the court for cause, the cause being this isn't in Britney's best interest. Nothing salacious. This just isn't in Britney's best interest. And the court did it. I was shocked that the court did it. The motions, there have been so many filings back and forth. James Spears threw Britney under the bus, threw Lynn Spears under the bus. Vivian Thoren, the lawyer that was in one of the first documentaries that was like not on the legal team and did the documentary and then was back on the legal team after the documentary. It was very odd.
Yeah.
Because she was like, no, I'm speaking on my own. You get her in court saying, well, Your Honor, Britney wasn't cross-examined on the 23rd. We don't know the veracity of her testimony. And I'm like, you're in court as your client, well, as James Spears is being suspended, calling Britney a liar. That's what we're doing right now. Rosengart went absolutely nuts in court and said, this is ridiculous. And he went off and James was suspended. And this is the first step towards ending this conservatorship. The key thing about it is that because the attorney-client privilege sticks with the position of conservator, everything that happened in the last 13 years gets turned over to the new conservator, including attorney-client conversations. So if they knew that they were recording her, that's going to get turned over. If they had conversations about recording her, that's getting turned over. All of it. So instead of just ending the conservatorship, which wouldn't trigger that document turnover, this is a very strategic plan to not just get Britney out of this conservatorship, but to investigate those that were benefiting from her for the last 13 years.
So do you think that Jamie Spears, the dad, is freaking out?
I think he's freaking out.
Okay, so this is from my friend Jared. Jared Lips on Instagram. He is a great guy, and he's a makeup artist, but he got very into this. He's a cancer survivor. He got really into reading documents and everything. So I wrote him because he was there at the court, and he wrote me this, and he said I could share it. So he said, Matthew is definitely on. That's the attorney. He would have turn and face us like we were the jury. He was passionate. After Vivian, James's lawyer, spoke twice about why the conservatorship should just be terminated, Matthew was like, no one from your team has mentioned 2 words, best interest. What is the best interest for the conservatee? He roasted her a lot. He said she can attack him, he can take it, but not about him. He was riveting. Vivian was so cringe. After Jamie got suspended, her voice was so pouty, and at one point she objected to something and just started talking, and Matthew stood up and said, Your Honor, she's arguing about Jamie's suspension, which the court has already ruled on. She started talking out of turn, and Matthew stood up and said she was being disrespectful to the court. The judge was more agitated by Matthew, like she was very lenient with Vivian's interruptions. Vivian was shocked that she would have to turn over documents because there's not enough time. She also objected to people's fees, even though they were filed back in March. She was just trying anything to do. I don't know what the point is. Let's see. Oh, he said he changed his ties from a red one to a pink one before he left. LOL. He said since Britney wasn't there, it wasn't as shocking or exciting as when we heard the other thing. They did mention her mental health. Her psychiatrist wrote that Jamie staying on was a deterrent. a detriment to her mental health. And then Vivian was like, he hasn't even spoken to her daughter in months. And then quickly added, he loves her so much and wants the best. And he just keeps being like, what's the best? The best is Jamie is suspended. He kept repeating this about Jamie. Cruel, abusive, and toxic. Toxic. Interesting.
Yep. Toxic is one of Matthew Rosengard's favorite words. It's in every single legal document when he talks about James Spears. He calls James Spears toxic in every legal document.
Amazing, being that is her best song ever.
Yep.
He said, these are not my feelings, these are Britney's words, but how her father treats her is abusive, cruel, and toxic. And then he said, oh, and Rachel Lindsay from The Bachelorette was there. Also, Andrew Galley from the Netflix doc.
Yes.
So thank you, Jared. He has a great podcast and a great Instagram, and he really is on it and following the whole Free Britney
There was
movement.
a lot. The attorneys had a lot of interaction in court. This is the first time we've seen this judge say no to Vivian Thuren. So I'm sure it was a shock to her because normally she goes into court and says, Your Honor, we want to do this and this, and the court goes along with it. Matthew Rosengard has taken the reins of this case, and I get the sense that James Spears' legal team is still reeling from the fact that they're no longer in control.
So now going forward, she's engaged, and she posted about 10 naked photos.
I saw that yesterday.
With just full-blown naked.
Yep, my boobs definitely don't defy gravity that way.
So I would think he would say Sam was the one that took the photos, and then she just put little daisies on the nips and the crotch. Being naked on Instagram does not make you mentally unwell. It's a lot of people are doing it. I'm just kind of like, I guess if this is what she wants to do, but then at the same time, as just a judgy mom, sometimes I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Like, why?
I mean, Kim Kardashian's been naked on Instagram too,
true.
and it's
That's
just.
True. But I don't think I do. I don't know. I just feel like
it's not on brand for Britney because we haven't been allowed to see what on brand for Britney is in 13 years.
And I definitely think it's just part of like, I don't give a fuck. And I wouldn't be surprised if once she really starts living her life, it won't be so much nakedness. Like once she can be creative again in another way besides spinning and just, being in her house, once she can actually like perform the music she wants, if she chooses to do that, or just do music and put it out there, maybe not perform it. It'll be interesting to see how this Instagram follows, because there was so much. To me, it was starting to annoy me, and I told my listeners that, like deciding what she posted, what the social media company posted,
the dissecting of Britney's gram,
why they took it down. Then she put something up, and it's the holding the boobs, and she's like, 3 days later, I'm reposting these 7 photos because the 7 before were blurry. What? No, they weren't. It's very odd.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But Britney's, 39, 40 years old, right? She has been living under her dad's control for all of that time. So to me, I look at her Instagram the way I would look at like a 18-year-old that's like giving the middle fingers to their dad.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it feels to me. It feels like, you know what? Fuck you, Dad. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to do all the things you don't want me to do. I'm waiting for her to be like naked eating cheeseburgers or something, because we know he was very controlling of her weight and diet.
Oh, he was? I didn't know that.
It came out in a few of the documentaries that he was like, we're going to get you in better shape, and you can only have 1 soda, not 2. So I'm waiting to see the rest of the rebellion of Britney Spears. But this is a big fuck you to her dad, because now he's not in control of her money. He can't say, you can't do it. Like if you act out on social media, you can't go on vacation. She also posted flying a prop plane. She was flying a prop plane. Like, I don't know where she is. The ocean seems very, very not Southern California. So I think she's out of the country.
They showed a couple clips of when right after the conservatorship, she had that like short-lived series or documentary or whatever it was, behind the scenes, which is, and it's Jamie, the professional chef, the dad, making her food before she and he's like, my daughter likes, grits. And I'm like, well, that's not healthy. Like, that's not that healthy. That's like a Southern-y thing. But, and then they show her like that she gets to go drive her car for an afternoon, and how weird that was. And then also in the documentary, they show the photographer guy that came out where she had given him a letter. Won't you please go on the air and read this? And she wrote it in third person, so that, not third person, but I guess it would be third. She wrote it so like he could read it.
Right.
Like, this is what, And it was all about her frustration of the People article that when K-Fed gave an interview, My Life with My Boys, he tells this whole side of the story. And she's like, this wasn't even true. Like, I don't even think she wanted to divorce him at that time. You know, she was like, but yeah, we were having problems. We were having problems because you were smoking pot every day at 5:00 a.m. This is not why. I was actually forced to kind of divorce you. And so that all came out, but we never got to see that because they got to that guy and threatened him legally.
Yeah, I don't remember which website. I don't know if it was Breathe Heavy. That letter had gotten out a while ago and then it had gotten taken down. And what we saw in some of the court documents, a year ago, is there was fees paid for Lou Taylor. And Lou was the former business manager. There's a lot of people who really want to see that arrangement investigated because of how much money was going to her company for, work on behalf of Britney. But it looked like the conservatorship paid for cease and desist letters to be sent to different websites that were critical of the conservatorship and of Lou Taylor individually. And so we know that they've had a hand in legally threatening people to take stuff down. And a lot of bloggers are like, I'm sorry, I don't want any piece of this. I don't have the money. Even if I'm right, I don't have the money to fight you, because even if you win in a lawsuit, you still are spending money in a lawsuit, and it's time and it's money and it's stress. And some people are like, it's just not that deep. I'll just take it down. It's fine. And I have no disrespect for people who do it because it is money and stress.
Yeah. And some people deal with it better than others. Some kind of relish in it and kind of get off on it.
Like the fight.
Yeah, and others just, oh my God, I can't, this is debilitating stress. So let's and I think people know that, and attorneys know that, and powerful people know that.
Absolutely.
And they said that Jamie was always very intimidating legally, intimidating in person, and that, that's when she realizes they're like, no, Jamie is you now.
And he seems
Jamie
like a fairly physically imposing man as well. Tall.
There are stories of when people were working with her, doing her makeup or whatever, and then he'd come in and it was like, and then he would fire people. All of a sudden they'd get a call, your services aren't needed anymore, because maybe he felt that she was confiding too much. And it was just so sad. It's like, you get a friend and then your dad just like takes them away, and there's no way that you can even call the friend again and be like, I'm sorry that you were fired.
It seems like she was very isolated intentionally. And I've talked about this a lot with that intentional isolation. It seemed they would change her phone numbers so that people couldn't get back in touch with her. And we're seeing that touched on now with her her assistant, and then her wardrobe stylist, talking about when they got separated from the business, that there was they called the phone numbers and the phone numbers were disconnected and they couldn't get back in touch. And I don't know what the conservatorship was saying to Britney inside. Were they telling her these people were fired, or were they like, no, they left you? Like, I'm the only one you have left.
Yes. Yeah. They don't care about you. They moved on to They moved on to Christina Aguilera, or they probably said some mean shit like that.
I'm the only one you have left. Yeah. Everyone else has left you. It's and creating that reliance and dependence on her father, who it seems early on in her career was not actively engaged.
Not at all. That's what's so interesting. He wasn't the stage dad.
Right.
It was Lynn who was there. A lot of people go, where is her mother?
Lynn didn't show up, at least in the court documents, until the last 2 years when she finally started objecting to things. So I don't know what shifted. I suspect, and this is just my suspicion, when Britney put her foot down and refused to do the next Vegas residency is when everybody started going, oh, the money has stopped. Mm-hmm. What's going on here? Why is she refusing to perform? Doesn't she love performing?
And I 100% believe that she agreed to do that next thing and then woke up and was like, wait a minute, I'm going to have to work my ass off again. And my life is not going to improve one iota.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get nicer things. I'm not going to get to do more fun things. I'm not going to be closer to my kids. It's going to be exactly the same, but I'm going to have to commit to doing it for another 3 years. No, I'm out.
Yeah, and maybe if I stop, then they'll listen to me.
Yeah.
Is what I got. And you know what?
It worked.
Everybody started going, oh, what's happening here? And that's when her attorney started objecting to some of the fee petitions. That's when everybody started getting a little more up in arms, is when she put her foot down and said she wasn't going to work. So she has been trying to claw back some power, which from within a conservatorship is very, very hard to do because she doesn't have any rights.
What do you think of Sam? I find that really interesting. I think I think they're a couple in love, and maybe he never felt it was his place to put his foot down as her boyfriend, or maybe he couldn't.
I think if he put his foot down, they would have separated him from the relationship very quickly.
So he had to act like he was playing the game, that he was going to play along to their appreciation, like of him being around and being her companion.
I think so. And we saw him comment after the court date on the 23rd, talking about Jamie being a dick. He was interviewed by, like, TMZ. They caught him outside of Whole Foods or Gelson's or something. And they're like, what do you think of that? And he's like, you know what? He is. He's kind of a dick. And I think that's public knowledge. I think everybody's aware.
I also think the older son having K-Fed file the restraining order so that he would never come around the boys because they had an altercation with one, I don't know if the older or the younger son. But I thought that was extremely, disturbing and really showed that this is not cute grandpa.
It was, and I think it helped. And Britney's attorney really brought that to light multiple times. Vivian Thoren and Jamie's legal team said, this new CPA shouldn't be taking over this estate. And Matthew Rosengart came back and said, I'm sorry, how is James Spears qualified? From what they said in court documents, he's an alcoholic, he's had financial troubles, he doesn't have financial acumen, and he has a domestic violence restraining order with her children. How is he qualified to be here at all? So
that's hot.
He just was like, who are you to talk?
Yeah.
And he kept bringing it up, but it's interesting to me that when that happened, it didn't change more for Britney. It wasn't until she spoke in court in front of the entire world that everybody went, oh, shit.
I get chills every time I think. And I think about the video of her fans being outside listening.
For years.
And listening to the court hearing. I mean, it was just fabulous. What do you think of Lou Taylor? Lou Taylor, I mean, and the fact that there were stories or rumors, maybe even some documents about how Amanda Bynes' parents were in contact with Lou Taylor about getting conservatorship for her. And there's even been some speculation that Kanye West's people were in, or Kim's people, I don't know.
Kanye said it on Twitter a few times that they were trying to fly doctors out to put him on a 5150 hold. He had left to Wyoming. So 5150 is the mental health emergency hold code here in California, but he left to Wyoming.
So that it wouldn't work there?
That's what I got from his Twitter. He said they're trying to get doctors out here to 5150 me, and those tweets came down pretty quick. He went on a whole Twitter rant. This was around the time that he peed on the Grammy and leaked his recording record industry contracts. So I was following his Twitter pretty closely because those contracts were juicy. And I was like,
what was juicy about him?
It was just how much he was getting paid, and then how they were doing the different, kind of the different phases of his record releases. We don't normally get to see behind the scenes of how he was negotiating his own industry contracts because those are all NDA'd, and artists don't leak all of their contracts. So it was interesting. He has, deadlines to deliver his art, but then he's got a 1.5 year extension after that so that he can, I'm like, I need a 1.5 year extension on anything I have to do. Let's do that. So it was really interesting to me, but that was going on during that time. There is room in conservatorships clearly for abuse. James Spears, as conservator of Britney's estate, negotiated himself percentages of her tours for being her conservator, but he's also getting paid a salary for being her conservator, which is highly unusual. He's not being paid for the hours he works. He's being paid a flat rate every month, no matter what. And Rosengart pointed out to the court that one of the things that offended Britney the most is that James Spears gets paid more than she's allowed to spend a month. And she was like, how are you getting more money than me? Because he's getting $18,000 a month, $16,000 in salary, and $2,000 for rent for an office space to be her conservator. But when the conservator of the person asked for fees, he's like, you're a professional conservator, you should pay it yourself. But he has had the conservatorship pay for everything, including his 4 different law firms. So with Lou Taylor, she has also benefited off of this. She placed people from her company right with Britney. People thought that was the assistant. Nobody really knew what she was up to. And every time she asked for fee increases, it seems that Jamie just rubber stamped it. So there will be a lot to uncover.
Yeah, and there was that she was in contact during when Lindsay Lohan was going through her troubles with Dina and Michael. And what I read is that it was Michael who put the kibosh on it was like, no, what is this? So I feel like she almost like was seeking out people and then would go to the parents.
She's
and
like,
be
this is our plan.
Yeah.
5150 hold, conservatorship, and then you take control of your adult child and tell them how to live.
And this way they'll be safe from like weirdos or becoming a drug addict or having someone take their money. And I think the parents think that, you know, maybe in the beginning that they're doing the right thing, you know, and then they enjoy it too much, or in this case. We're going to wrap it up, but what do you think, one last question. What do you think of Kim Kardashian's law career, and where do you predict that's going to go?
She hasn't passed the baby bar yet.
Yes.
So in California, if you go to a non-accredited law school or if you go a non-traditional route like apprenticeship, you have to pass this test before you can continue on, and you only have a certain period of time to pass it. So if she doesn't pass it...
you can't take it 5 times?
No, you have 3 chances within a period of time to pass it to move on. So I don't know if she will keep moving on. I'm hesitant to give her any shade about it because she's using it to use her celebrity platform to actually make changes she sees as necessary. Her dad was an attorney from watching the Kardashians, and I've watched all of the Kardashian everything. I love reality TV. She's always been very curious, like bordering on cyber stalker, like, no, I can get into people's voicemails. And I think she has the help and the money to actually effectuate change. And I kind of respect that she's like, look, I'm in these rooms with lawyers and senators and the president and congressmen. I want to be able to intellectually hold my own, and I want to know more. And I respect that she did it. Law school is not easy.
No, I know. My sister's an attorney, and I know how hard it is. And I thought it was interesting because I was like, you know, I wonder if this will become people who have the money a way to go, like private tutoring, like you would be homeschooled. Like, why do you have to go to, you know, Yale and be in school and live in a cold place and try to have a side job? Like, what if you just had the money and you literally had like a private tutor? But I think it's kind of also proving, because she is so bright and she didn't pass it, I think it was a little bit of a pat on the back for all the law schools in the world that, like, maybe you do need to be in a classroom.
There's something to it.
And maybe you do need to be in study groups with other people, and you do to go this path. I think just the awareness alone and the bills that she helped pass with, you know, President Trump and stuff is good.
Yeah. And
I think it's all good. But me as just like girlfriend, you know, stop. I wouldn't. If I was her, I wouldn't. I'd be like, I've got nothing else to prove. I can still, I like learning about this. I'm still going to continue to learn. At this point, with my 4 little kids and my 29 skim lines, I'm just going to take a little breather. I'm still going to do my work in helping prison reform and other people that need it. But that's what I think. And I don't give her any shade either. I think it's great. I just think I was a little bit concerned because I was like, what's going to happen to law schools if everyone can pass, you know, like, and I know how hard it is. So I think it made real lawyers feel a little bit better.
I think most people don't have the money to find a lawyer who's going to mentor them that way. I don't know if Kim has an undergrad degree. There's some undergrad requirements. So there's some undergrad requirements to go to law school in California, which is probably why this path worked. I think there's always room for advancing your education and knowing more without needing that degree. I don't think Kim's going to take on clients and have trust accounts and deal with all the bullshit headache of being an attorney. So I think there's room for her to learn about law without having to go that route. I also think trying to take the baby bar during a pandemic at home would be a very different and difficult experience for anyone. The law students I've connected with just through my channel in their first and second years of law school during COVID have been like, this has been so difficult, because a lot of law school is sitting and talking to others, trying to figure out the same thing you're trying to figure out. And you have that kind of hive mind where you can work with it. You have a big class atmosphere where you're all trying to figure out the answers together. I can't imagine doing that kind of in a silo. It would have been very difficult, and I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's hopefully that these kids
Getting
can learn
back
together again.
Yep.
Emily, total delight. You're going to come to my Nashville show to see Chris Frangiola and I November 20th. Thank you. This was just unbelievably fun and so informative. And tell everybody where they can follow you and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. I am at the Emily D. Baker all over the internet, on Twitter and Instagram for faster updates on the legal pop culture cases that I'm covering, on YouTube at the Emily D. Baker for kind of deep dives into all the legal documents. If you want to know every document in the Britney case, there's a playlist. I've got them all. And then The Emily Show is an entertainment news podcast that covers pop culture legal commentary.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
coming.
This has been such a pleasure. I know we could talk forever. My voice is not going to let us, but we could absolutely talk forever. And I'm going to harass you every time I'm in LA to come and talk about Housewives, because there's lots of the Shaw of it all to come.
You are welcome back anytime. Hit me up. It'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I really enjoyed Emily stopping by. And after the cameras were down and the audio was down, we even talked a little bit more, which I'm going to be able to share with you on Patreon. You go to heathermcdonald.net, click on Patreon, change your life. I love how much support I get from Patreon. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.